There is no single Chinese food. There is no single Chinese landscape. There is barely a single Chinese language. What there is, instead, is a 4,000-year cultural tradition spread across one of the most varied, most contested, most regionally distinct corners of the world. Welcome back to Cultures of the World. Today, we are spending some time with the Chinese cultural sphere, which includes mainland China and Taiwan, plus the diaspora communities in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Hong Kong, Macau, and around the world. A note before we begin. The political relationship between mainland China and Taiwan is genuinely contested and, frankly, beyond the scope of this episode. People hold deeply held different views, and we are not going to try to settle them here. We will spend our time with the deeper cultural tradition, the food, the philosophy, the writing, the tea, that both sides share and that is older than any modern political question. Let's start with the scale. Mainland China is enormous, about 3.7 million square miles, almost the same area as the United States, with about 1.4 billion people. Taiwan is a separate, self-governed island of about 23 million people, sitting around 100 miles off the mainland coast. But China is, geographically, almost as much a continent as a country. The frozen northern grasslands near the Mongolian border are nothing like the subtropical rice paddies of Yunnan in the southwest. The dry, dusty interior of Xinjiang feels completely different from the coastal megacities of Shanghai and Guangzhou. The Tibetan Plateau in the west sits over 14,000 feet above sea level. The Yangtze Delta, in the east, is a flat ribbon of rivers and canals at sea level. Now, language. This is where it gets interesting and where we need to be careful. There is no one Chinese language. Mandarin is the standard official language in both mainland China and Taiwan. But Cantonese, spoken in Hong Kong and the southern Guangdong province, is a separate spoken language with 60 million speakers, mutually unintelligible from Mandarin. Hokkien, Hakka, a Shanghainese, Teochew, and many more are all still living languages of millions. A Cantonese speaker and a Mandarin speaker can read each other's writing, with some effort, but they cannot easily understand each other when they talk. The writing system, by contrast, holds them all together. The same characters, give or take some simplification of strokes in mainland China, are used across the entire Chinese cultural sphere. A character written in Beijing is read by a person in Taipei, and a person in Hong Kong, and a person in Singapore. It is the deepest cultural connecting thread. We are not going to do a phrase teaching segment today, because the politics of which dialect we should teach is genuinely fraught. Instead, I want to spend that time on the writing. Chinese is the longest continuously used writing system in human history. The earliest Chinese characters we can read, carved into the shoulder blades of cattle and the underside of tortoise shells over 3,200 years ago, can still be partially read by a literate Chinese speaker today, with some study. Most ancient scripts went extinct. The Egyptian hieroglyphs were forgotten for 1,000 years. The Maya writing system sat unread for centuries after the Spanish conquest. Linear B sat unread for 3 millennia. But Chinese characters just kept going, generation after generation, slowly evolving, never breaking the chain. And Chinese calligraphy, the art of writing those characters with a brush, is held in the Chinese cultural tradition as the highest of all visual arts. Above painting, above sculpture. The argument is that the brushstroke of a single character, the speed of the line, the weight of the ink, the rhythm of the brush, reveals the character of the person who wrote it. To be a great calligrapher is to have a great soul made visible. Now, food. Chinese cuisine is best understood by region. There are 8 traditional schools of Chinese cooking, and they share almost nothing in common except chopsticks and the cultural value placed on family eating together. In the southwest, in Sichuan and Hunan, the food is spicy and numbing, built around dried chilies and a special peppercorn called ewajiao that creates a tingling sensation on the lips. Amapo e tofu, dan dan noodles, twice-cooked pork. In Guangdong, in the south, Cantonese cooking is light, delicate, fresh, heavy on seafood, the lightest of stir-fries, dim sum brunches with bamboo steamer baskets stacked on the table. The cooking is built around respecting the natural flavor of every ingredient. In the north, around Beijing, the diet shifts toward wheat, noodles, dumplings, pancakes, breads, Peking duck, hand-pulled noodles, a different food culture entirely. In Shanghai and the Yangtze Delta, the cooking is sweet and rich, slow-braised pork belly, freshwater fish, sticky rice cakes. Taiwan has its own distinctive food culture, heavy in night market street food, with influences from Hokkien settlers, Hakka refugees, indigenous Taiwanese peoples, and a Japanese colonial layer from the early 20th century. Bubble tea, sweet milk tea with chewy tapioca pearls, was invented in Taiwan in the 1980s and is now drunk worldwide. And running underneath all of this is tea. Tea, cha, is the universal Chinese drink. The practice of a gongfu cha, careful, repeated infusions of leaves in a small clay pot, with each tiny cup poured for sharing, is a real daily ritual in tea houses across both mainland China and Taiwan. It is not formal the way the Japanese tea ceremony is formal. It is friendly, slow, sociable. You sit, the water boils. The leaves open, you drink, you talk. The water boils again. Hours pass. Now, philosophy. 3 major traditions have braided together in the Chinese cultural sphere for so long that most people don't bother separating them. Confucianism, about social relationships, family duty, respect for elders, the well-ordered society. Taoism, about flowing with nature, the balance of opposites, the wisdom of doing less. And Buddhism, which arrived from India in the 1st century and adapted itself thoroughly into Chinese life. A traditional Chinese household didn't have to pick one. The grandparents went to the Buddhist temple to pray for the ancestors. The same grandparents consulted Taoist priests when the children fell ill. The same grandparents raised those children on Confucian principles of family hierarchy. All 3 at once. That layered approach to belief, taking what works from each tradition, instead of demanding a single answer, is one of the deepest qualities of the Chinese cultural mind. Now for the wonder moment of today's episode, the Great Wall. You have heard of the Great Wall. What you might not know is that there is no one Great Wall. The thing we call the Great Wall is a sprawling system of fortifications, built and rebuilt and connected together over almost 2,000 years by a dozen different dynasties, stretching across 13,000 miles of mountains and deserts in northern China. If you laid it out flat, it would be more than half the distance from New York to Sydney. Most of it is in ruins now. Most of it was never really meant to stop a determined army. What it stopped was the easy backhand forth of small raiding parties. It was a giant administrative speed bump, built across the geography of an entire continent, brick, by millions of laborers over millennia. You can walk on it today. You can stand on a watchtower at sunset and see the wall snaking off into the mountains in both directions, and realize that this is, in some sense, the longest single human-built object on Earth. A 2,000-year-old, half-collapsing argument about what is inside the empire and what is outside. Next time, we will cross from the British Isles to the wide green damp of the British and Irish countryside, and talk about the language that everyone listening to this is, almost certainly, hearing me speak right now. Until then, my friend, the next time you drink a cup of tea, any tea, pause for a second. The leaves you are about to drink came, eventually, from a tradition that started in China. Hot water on dried leaves, steam, time, a small bowl, hand it to a friend. Goodbye for now.